So we're going to start our new unit, Dependence and Competition in an Ecosystem. So your targets are to infer competitive relationships from the information on an ecosystem and to predict how changes in biotic or abiotic resources will impact a population. Biotic versus abiotic factors. So remember that biotic means living or once living organisms in an ecosystem. So animals, plants, fungi, bacteria. It can even be dead animals, dead plants, because they were once living. Abiotic means that we're looking at non-living elements in the ecosystem. So example could be water, air, soil, sunlight, temperature, minerals, rocks. Okay, so and this picture has humidity, pH level. So all of this is not abiotic, non-living. So what you're going to do here is for each one of these statements, you're going to indicate if it's biotic with the B or abiotic, AB. So for example, living things or their materials that directly or indirectly affect an organism and its environment. So the keyword there is living things. So that means it's biotic because that's the keyword. Another example, non-living physical and chemical factors which affect the ability or organisms to survive and reproduce. So again, non-living, that means it's abiotic. Temperature, okay, well I can see that temperature right here is abiotic, so AB. Organisms, so organisms are living things, biotic. So you're going to do the rest on your own. Soil, climate, water, decaying wood, sunlight, and tree. You're going to indicate if they're biotic or abiotic. So at this time, you can go ahead and pause the video so you can finish this up. So now we're going to be looking at relationships and different types of how organisms can be classified. So you have producers, which they make their own food. You have consumers, so they must consume an organism. You have herbivores, where they eat producers or eat plants. Carnivores, they eat consumers or they eat meat only. Omnivores eat both producers and consumers, so they're going to eat plants and animals. Decomposers break down the unused dead material and turn them into nutrients. So basically, it's going to be like your earthworms or your fungus, where they're breaking down dead stuff and turning it back into nutrients. Scavengers eat dead organisms, so like your vultures, your hyenas, and so forth. Predator and prey. So that type of relationship is when a predator is going to hunt and kill its prey to eat for energy. Okay, so remember everything's for energy. Parasite host. So a parasite's going to infect a host and will steal the nutrients, and the host is being harmed. So this could be like fleas, mosquitoes, ticks, and so forth. So now what you're going to do is you're going to read each description and classify the organism. So lions only eat other consumers. Well, then that's going to make them a carnivore. Okay, so what you're going to do is for each one of these, you're going to do the same thing. Read it and then indicate which one of these it is. So humans can eat both consumers and producers. Well, if they can eat both, then they're going to be omnivores. All right. Cows only eat grass. Oh, that's a herbivore. So you're going to do plants need sunlight, water, and soil to create energy. Hyenas often wait for the discarded leftovers to eat. Earthworms will return nutrients into the soil. Heartworms can infect a dog, eventually killing the dog. A cat will hunt a mouse to eat. So you're going to do the rest. Go ahead and pause the video, and then when you're ready, go ahead and hit play to move on. So now that we've talked about abiotic and biotic factors and the different types of organisms in an environment, we're going to talk about how they depend and they compete for those factors. So organisms depend on and compete for biotic and abiotic factors such as food, sunlight, space. So space could be like shelter. Food can be, like plants or other animals. So here we have an example of an ecosystem. So again, they're all depending on either, water. The pond could be like shelter for it to survive. So like a space. So, this fish could be competing with this fish. This frog could be competing with them as well. You have was I saying, sunlight. So plants are going to need sunlight. So maybe these closer to the top are going to get more sunlight. And then again, food, you know, like this fish can be competing with the frogs for the smaller fish, or you know, the frog could be competing with the turtles for these little insects. So it just all depends on if they're omnivores, carnivores, herbivores, you know, and so forth. So here we're going to get some practice. It says look at the picture and answer the question. So here you go. We have this right here. Let me fix that. And it says, what two organisms are competing for the same food? Okay, so again, this is something that we learned in the 7th grade. So which two organisms are competing for the same food? Okay, well, we can see that the frog's energy goes into the snake, and it also goes into the hog. So the organisms competing for the same food are the snakes and frogs. I'm sorry, hawks. Both want to eat the frogs. Okay, so they both want to eat the frogs. Or you can say the frogs and the snakes. Well, because if you look at it, the grasshopper's energy goes into the frog, and it also goes into the snake. Okay, so snakes and frogs, because they both want to eat the grasshopper. All right. So either one of those works. Make sure you understand how to read a food web. This is like 7th grade stuff, so you should be able to know how to do that. Because now we're going to get into our practice. So again, we have a food web. It says which two organisms compete for the same food, and what is the food? So kind of like what we were writing our sentence before. Now you got to think, what would happen if that food was removed? So if they could no longer eat that food, what would happen to those two organisms? What would happen to the population? What would happen to the food web? Okay, so think about it. Slide number 7. The strangler fig is a vine that starts out as a seed at the tree canopy of the rainforest. It drops its roots down for the canopy to the forest floor. What is the vine competing for? So what is that vine trying to get? Again, use your notes. What is it competing for? And then slide number 8. Giant salvinia is an aquatic plant that floats on water and reproduces rapidly. When these plants die, decomposition by bacteria affects oxygen levels in the water. As more plants die, less oxygen is available in the water. Students observed a pond covered by giant salvinia. So, what will happen to the fish in the pond? Okay? So, knowing what we've learned, what's going to happen to the fish? How is what they're competing for? What's going to happen? Go ahead and type that out. Once you're done with this, go ahead and turn it in. Again, guys, if you're missing any work, make sure you get that turned into me ASAP. We do have a 0 day coming up pretty soon. If you have any questions, please reach out. Thank you.